Hey friends, it's me, the Ebony Otaku, and the well-rounded nerd. I'm gonna read a chapter from Minka Lesk straight through, so I'll get my chitty chat out the way in the beginning. So we haven't made it to Minka herself yet in my reading. In my personal reading I have, but in reading for you I have not. And we are following Major Benedict right now, who has just had an encounter with General Usarkar E. Creed. Make sure you get the right one. Aboard the flagship of his unit. They have now been transported down to the surface. Every one of the Cadian soldiers, remember, Cadia is very special. Cadia sits next to the Eye of Terror. It is their job as humans to protect the Imperium of Man from whatever comes out of that thing. That's quite the tall task for mortals. Everyone on that planet's raised to be a soldier. Everyone on that planet has a purpose when it comes to war. It is the ultimate example of a non-discriminatory society. You want inclusion and diversity and equity? Read Warhammer. Everyone can die for the Golden Throne. All can be sacrificed to the ruinous powers. There's a place for you in Warhammer. Anywho, but we've passed the point of generalities and meeting. Now they are going to the point of making war. Abaddon the Despoiler. We talked about Abaddon. If you don't know who it is, we'll go back and listen. Abaddon the Despoiler himself is coming out of the Eye of Terror with his minions and attacking Cadia. That's why all of these units from across the galaxy have been called home, to push back one of the biggest threats of the ruinous powers. He has an obsession with Cadia, and if Cadia falls, many other outposts in the Imperium of Man will fall, which gives a huge foothold to chaos, but more importantly to Abaddon himself. Not small. Benedict is the major of the 101st. He leads them. They are a decorated tank unit. And when they are deployed to the surface finally, which took a lot of time because a lot of troops were trying to get down to the surface at once, when they finally get down to the surface, his troop is giving orders to go to a very remote outpost, and they don't know why. Everyone they know, all of their fellows, are being sent out to war somewhere on Cadia. And his little group, I mean, you follow orders. That's just how the military works. You don't ask why, you just do. They're sent to this remote outpost, and they are dropped off, and they are left. And when they get there, all they encounter is one person who's been basically kind of the caretaker, and then they can't contact anyone. And through comm links and voxes, they can hear all of the fighting and mayhem and things that are going on in their soldiers. They are literally bred for war, and they are listening to their brothers and sisters in battle dying all around them on the planet. And they've literally been dropped off into what their opinion is a safe space. They were made for war. They are famous for their ability to make war. They've been awarded for their ability to make war. And for some reason, they have been left stranded in a place where they cannot make war. I haven't gotten to why they're there yet, but I have my suspicions with the context clues as to why they have been dropped at this particular outpost. But where we're going to pick up in our reading today is Benedict and his men almost going stir crazy. They aren't creatures. They aren't beings of slothfulness. They don't rest. They don't wait. They are meant to always be doing something. And they are caught in a position of doing nothing because not only have they been left there, there's no way for them to leave. They don't have a vehicle. They don't know where they are. and as they were actually making their way to this outpost, most people didn't even know what they were talking about. They were just given these daisy chain orders to find their way there. And then once they were there, they'd be told what they were doing. But now that they're there, they don't know what they're doing. And they're missing out on the battle. What a position to be in as a soldier, and especially to have the ability to hear what is going on outside of your little safe haven that they didn't ask for, by the way, but to be able to hear what's going on elsewhere, to be able to hear the battle, to be able to hear the screams of your comrades, and they can't do anything. Let's catch up with them. A reading from Minka Lesk, The Last White Shield, by Justin D. Hill. Chapter 4, Observation Post 9983. Without facts, all the Cadian 101st had was speculation. and that was not good. Without evidence, a guardsman's mind turned to the worst possible eventualities, as a child in the dark with an imagination of monsters. Benedict did not care where the enemy were. What they needed were facts, an enemy's location and strength, the best way to kill them. Benedict ran through all the units he could think of and tried to get a link through to them. But the channels were overloaded with bellowing of men in battle. The men and women of the Cadia and 101st listened in stunned silence to the Vox communications from the fields of Tyrok. Panicked shouts of surrounded units, commanders desperately trying to locate their men. All the confusion and terror of war. It sounded like hell. Benedict punched the wall with his fury. "Powerless!" he hissed, pacing up and down, trying to find an explanation for what was happening as the rumble of war shook the Tyrok fields. "We're fragging powerless." Had some hothead gone rogue? A perceived insult, perhaps? The eye of terror drove men mad. But as they listened, a thread of calm began to establish itself. It was one man's voice, cutting through the shouting and the screams. He gave commands, calmed terrified men down. He started to bring the scattered survivors of the Tyrok fields together again into an army, fought chaos with order. "That's Creed," Benedict said, and stood with one hand on the Vox, as if standing next to the general. "That's Usakar Creed," he shouted. "Get Creed on the Vox. No, send him a message. Tell him Major Benedict and the 101st are stranded at Observation Post 9983. Mayor tried, but the Vox channels were overloaded. After an hour of failing, he raised his hand. "There's going to be an announcement, sir." The whole 101st gathered in a rough horseshoe around the Vox. "Men and women of Cadia." It was Creed. He was speaking intimately. It was as if he were in the room with them. They felt his closeness. It was part of his magic. "We lost many today. Friends, sons, mothers, daughters, comrades. We withstood fire, bombardment, treachery, and cowardice. And we did not flinch. We did not turn to ask if another would step up and take our place. We stood. We fought, and we strode forward into battle." There was a sound of distant cheers through the Vox, and Benedict's stomach ached. If only they could have been there, in the battle. He pictured the scene, the vast Tyrok field stretching away, fires burning, Medicaid units looking for the injured, Creed's bullish silhouette with that great coat slung over his shoulders, cigar stub in hand. "Today, the High Command of Cadia have asked me to serve as Lord Castellan of Cadia." There were more cheers. The atmosphere in the room was so quiet you could hear a man breathe. Benedict could imagine Creed's knuckles white on the podium, waiting for the crowd to go silent. Creed's voice came again.
I have accepted the honor.
Benedict and Dahl exchanged looks. There was a long pause as the cheers of Tyrock Fields rang out. Creed was waiting. Benedict imagined him putting up his hand for silence.
What happened today was no accident. It was no chance. This was orchestrated by a mind that has planned and plotted for thousands of years. The Despoiler. It is the hour that we have long foreseen, the chance to prove ourselves his match.
More cheers.
I offer you nothing but blood and battle. This is our part in a war that has lasted 10,000 years. And today, brothers, today you have won a great victory that will be remembered for another 10,000 years, or as long as the Imperium of mankind shall last.
The sound of cheering was drowned by a military band playing Flower of Cadia. The broadcast was clearly over.
Turn it off,
Benedict told Mare. There was stunned silence. Benedict stood by the Vox and looked into the faces of his soldiers. You heard what Creed had to say, and I know that you feel the same as me. We should have been down there. Instead, we're here, in this throne-forsaken observation platform. I'm going to do all I can to sort out this mess. You'll all have a chance to strike a blow against our foes. I promise you that. The next day, dawn did not come. The skies of Cadia turned black as the great fleets of Imperial Navy defense monitors and orbital defense platforms, the proud defenses that he had seen just days before from the decks of the Fidelitas Vector, were swept aside by the vast fleet of the Black Legion. Massed cruisers, landers, crash pods, and war host of the Despoiler filled the skies. Weeks turned into months, and the attitude changed from anger to despair. Creed's pronouncements over the Vox became more impassioned.
People of Cadia,
each speech would begin.
We have smashed an armored column at Casa Relon. The enemy has landed on Cadian soil in great force. We are the generation upon whose shoulders lies the heavy duty of sending them all to their deaths.
Creed's deep voice remained a constant, even when he had bad news to share.
People of Cadia, the walls of Kasir Bartok have been breached, but I am assured that the men there are fighting with grit and resolve, and it cannot be long before the enemy are trapped and isolated and their forces entirely destroyed. People of Cadia, hold strong. We are the barb that holds the foe. Reinforcements are on the way. The High Lords of Terra commend you for your sacrifices. Hold the line. Repel the enemy. Do not give ground.
Each night, clots of black cruisers dropped flocks of landers that fell planetward like flocks of carrion birds. They disgorged their full payloads, spewing out a disorganized sprawl of ritually scarred cultists, demon engines, and champions of dark gods who killed their way to power. Feral and hive worlds had been emptied of populations and loaded into vast hangars. And now they spilled out into maddened squads, numbering thousands in each, charging in wild jubilation, screaming unholy names, losing themselves to prayer and abandon. They spewed out in such numbers that even the massed brigades and armored columns of the Cadian shock troopers, the finest human warriors in the galaxy, were slowly driven back, trench by trench, redoubt by redoubt, and finally, caser by caser. Day after day, hour after hour, tons of ash coiled snake-like into upper atmosphere, turning the planet dark. Each day, Major Bendick stood on the high parapet of the observation post 9983 and watched in desperate impotence. On the 30th day, he took out his scopes to watch the Black Fleets mass its power against his hometown of Kasir Halig. His tri-dome helmet cast a slanted shadow across his face as the broad side of the lance batteries strobed the night of Cadia with long bars of incandescent white light. The lightning storm went on for hours, smothering the plain in dust and ash and stitching an irregular pattern of mushroom clouds up into the high atmosphere. Kasir Halig was taking a fearful punishment. Day by day, as its void shields flickered blue and then yellow, they were straining to its limits. Sir. Bendick turned. Sergeant Tyson was making his way towards him, still pulling his thick ice world gloves on. Bendick had been leaning far over the parapet as he pulled back, and Tyson joined him. How do you think it's going down there? Tyson asked. The lance lightning strobed their faces. They're taking a hell of a pounding. Tyson nodded. It won't be long, Bendick said. Tyson's expression said it would not. He puffed out his cheeks. You should get some rest, sir, he said. Another furious broadside against the city rolled like thunder. I was born in that city, Bendick said. I know her switchback streets and armored intersections like the butt of my last rifle. They stood, lightning casting stark shadows across their faces as the orbital bombardment continued. The mountain beneath their feet trembled as titanic explosion on the plains lit clouds from within, like distant red nebula. There was a series of gathering blasts, each one big enough to show yellow through the gloom, and Bendick felt his guts knot themselves together as the boom rolled across the plain towards him. The debris rose miles high, chunks of rock creep, bastions, armories, and defenders like dust rising into the upper atmosphere. Kasir Halig was no more. The very fate of the Imperium of Man hung in the balance, and there was nothing he or his Cadian 101st could do. We can stay ready, Tyson said by way of consolation. Stay fresh. We can keep ourselves sharp. Bendick made no comment. He had no more words left. He was stuck on the mountain fastness, and Cadia was dying before his eyes. On the 110th day of the war, Bendick was stripped to the waist doing press-ups when the Vox unit crackled. He fumbled for a moment, dusted off his hands. "Tyson!" The other man's voice was indistinct with a gale that was blowing outside. "Say that again." Bendick had to raise his voice to be heard. "Again," he said. There was a long pause as his words echoed in the vast empty chamber. "A Valkyrie? Are you sure?" "Yes," said Tyson. "Coming in now." Bendick cursed as the link was dropped. He pulled his undershirt on and flak jacket on and started to hurry through the empty hangars. The Vox link was reestablished as he exited the stairwell. Tyson was calling his name, the urgency of his voice sent a chill of fear through Bendick, the sound of his footsteps gathering speed until he was running. "Bendick," Tyson said. "You have to come. He's here." Tyson was practically shouting into the Vox. "Who?" Bendick demanded. Tyson could barely contain himself. "It's frickin' Creed. He's here." I'm really enjoying this book. I love the way that Justin Hill writes about war, because regardless of what one's opinions are of war, war is something that happens, will continue to happen, has happened, will always happen. As long as there are humans, there will be war. Because we can't help ourselves. And sometimes the wars have no meaning. I mean, right now in the news, there are things going on the planet that we can't understand why they're happening. There's literally a country off the coast of my own that has fallen. And they're at war. Civil war, but war nonetheless. I think it's important, and I'll get personal here for just a second, so this is me talking. But I think it's important to read stories like this, even a fictionalized account, so that we have understanding and respect for those who do put themselves in harm's way. Whether by draft or by choice, there are people who fight the wars. There always have been, and there always will be. I am not a person who fights the wars. There are things that I do that are helpful, but it's not in battle. The way that Justin Hill has written this, you feel like you're there with them, like you're experiencing being pulled out of rubble, like you can feel the weight of waiting that Bendick and his troops are going through, that need to be a part of the battle, the frustration of knowing that everyone that they trained with, that they fought with, are dying and they are not there to be by their side. They didn't have a chance to protect them. They didn't have a chance to try. They were just put up in an ivory tower for some unknown reason, while battle swirls around them, and Bendick actually watches as the town he was born in is blasted off the map. I can't imagine. I've never been a soldier, so I can't imagine what a soldier sees or experiences. Other books that aren't Warhammer that I would recommend if you want to have an experience of certain times, Johnny Tremaine. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie. I would also recommend a book such as maybe A Light in the Forest. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie. I would think of looking back and reading a lot of things that maybe Dickens wrote. Even though his stories weren't about war, they were about the experiences of the disenfranchised and the impoverished, mostly children, and the things they had to go through. One thing that fiction lets us do is lets us safely experience another situation and put ourselves into it. That's why printed books, to me at least, are still so important, because when you're with a book, you're in the book. So you are wrapping yourself in the world in these pages. And for a moment, a very brief moment, you're in someone else's experiences and point of view. And it's in the experience of others, the choosing to understand and experience others, that we start to see one another with our human eyes instead of the eyes clouded by our own biases and perspectives. I cannot imagine being someone who was born to fight and being denied that opportunity and watching my home be obliterated. This is a fictional tale, but somewhere on our planet right now that's happening. And that's when you know the fiction is good. Good fiction is grounded in reality. You should not feel so separate and afar from the story. Suspension of disbelief should only take us so far. Suspension of disbelief is there to put us into the world, but it's not there to disassociate us from reality. Those are two different things. And Warhammer, on the whole, the universe that the Black Library has created, that Games Workshop has created, is one where a person can have an experience of what it could be like. And what I'm really loving about this particular novel is it's written from the human perspective. You know, the Space Marines are fun. I love the Space Marines. But they are demigods. They are superhuman warriors. They have literally been changed so much that you can barely call them human anymore. This is about human soldiers. Unaugmented, unchanged. If they have something, it's just to replace a body part that got blown off so they could keep fighting. They are degular humans. You know, kind of like the Remembrancers. I think that's why I like the Fulgrim so much, is because it was so focused on the Remembrancers and their experiences. It's what do regular people do in extraordinary circumstances? You know, when there are conflicts of war, regardless of what the reasons of the war are, there are still people who are regular folks who are caught up in it, who have to make choices they never thought they would have to make, or have to do things they never thought they'd have to do, experience things that nobody wants to experience. And this is that human story. What do the regulars do against insurmountable, the most formidable odds and enemies possible? And I don't know how this is going to end. Don't you dare spoil this one in the comments. I'll delete it. But I'm hoping the humans triumph in the end. Because even where there is the deepest despair, the darker the night, the brighter the morning. There should be, I hope, at the end of Minka Lesk, a bright hope. I hope that when all of the fighting is said and done, that somehow these humans, the underdogs, are able to overcome and push back that which would threaten to annihilate them. I didn't know it was going to be that deep today, but, you know, she watched too much news today and this week. But it's okay. Art imitates life, and art is a direct product, representation of the time in which it's produced. That's how art works. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to put down reading this on the channel for a while until I read through more. I'm about halfway through the first book in the omnibus, and then once I get through that, I'll pick something else to pick back up and read out of here. But I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to try to do more straight through readings. I'm going to try that with Dune. I have one more character establishment I want to do, and then I just want to read straight through. My husband actually made that suggestion. He said, why don't you just try reading straight through and see if people would like to listen to a playlist of just a straight through reading. And I was like, well, yeah, I can do that. I don't have to explain everything. You are intelligent folks. So we're going to try that. I'm going to try it next with Dune and see how that goes. Just straight through, probably set a timer, maybe read 30, 40 minutes, and then wherever I end, I end. So we'll see. But please tell me how you like that. Comments are your friend. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Feed the algorithm God, and I will see you in the next one.